Right now, very pleased to have with us on the program Todd Vandermeide, NRA's lobbyist in Illinois. Todd, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Cam.
How are you?
Well, after a pheasant hunt today for a fundraiser, I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, wow. You got to go hunting and you raise money for a good cause?
I was for a state senator. I mean, what better
Hopefully
time
for a
than
good
go?
cause.
Yeah, well, what better time than you can go kill stuff and do politics and talk about guns all at the same time?
Well, good for you. And you get to cap it all off with an appearance on your favorite radio show of all time.
Oh, absolutely, the Todd and Cam show. What a better way to end the night.
So, public radio in Chicago decided to take a look at the city's gun laws. And it seems to me like they were casting a very sympathetic eye and ear towards Mayor Daley. They start their piece off with a quote from Daley. Quote, "They're barricading the doors, but they're saying everybody else should have guns. That's the thing that bothers me most in Washington. As you notice, all Washington is being barricaded, all federal buildings, but they're saying everybody else should be able." And the public radio in Chicago points out his fears were well-founded. So, Todd, what's going on in Chicago? I mean, they've got the new post-McDonald gun laws in place, and it does not appear as if it is very easy for folks to be able to exercise their constitutional right.
Well, what's happened is that they rushed through this new ordinance, and that we know that there are about 100,000 people in the city of Chicago that have FOID cards. 1,200 have gotten their CFPs, or Chicago firearms permits. So it would appear that an overwhelming majority of Chicago residents are not complying with the new ordinance. And there was an article, I'm not sure if it was the same one that you're reading now, because I just kind of get besieged with the number of stories that come out about this stuff.
I'm sure.
About an individual who went in, felt discouraged, and said he's going to do what he's always done, keep guns at home and ignore the ordinance.
Yeah, that is the same story. He said they're making it so people get discouraged so you don't get a handgun. That's what it seems like to me. Now, again, keep in mind, the Supreme Court has said this guy has a right to own a gun. The city of Chicago is the one for his home, in his home for self-defense. But it's the city of Chicago that's the one saying, no, you still can't legally own it.
And you thought third world banana republics only existed in Central America. But let's take this a little bit closer to home. There's an NRA member who contacted me, who went and took his training, who has a FOID card, who went and sought his Chicago firearms permit and was denied. He was denied because in the 90s, he received a felony for carrying a gun. That law was thrown out by the Illinois Supreme Court. He was smart enough to take it and have his lawyer appeal to the courts and say, hey, the law I was convicted under for carrying a gun for self-defense, it wasn't in connection with anything else. It was merely carrying a gun. And because he lived in a war zone, was thrown out, and therefore I shouldn't be convicted of a felony. Well, the court agreed. He has a misdemeanor conviction on his record, but the city of Chicago has denied him his CFP based on that misdemeanor conviction. Misdemeanor conviction that does not prohibit him from having a gun under Illinois state law nor under federal law.
Really? So
it's make it up as you go along. And we're waiting to see the outcome of this. He's appealed the decision to the city of Chicago. But it's one of a number of cases that we're monitoring and working with to see how it all goes and where this thing's all going to end. I hazard to guess that at the end of the day, there will be more litigation coming out of the state of Illinois than any other state in the nation.
You may be right, Todd. I think they're going to be, a pretty fierce competition with California and perhaps New Jersey and Massachusetts as well. But there's certainly a lot of things that could be challenged. And, and one of the amazing things about this story is that one of the justifications that Mayor Daley gave for these post-McDonald gun laws, including the extended registration requirements, he said, quote, talking about police officers, He said there's a 911 call, and they're going there. How, when they get there, should they have the knowledge that you have the right to carry a gun, that there are guns in this home, and how many guns and what type of guns there are? And he said, in other words, the police need to have access to this information, and that's why we need this registration. 5 months in, the police don't have access to that information, Todd.
So they should assume that every house that doesn't have a CFP registered to it, that there's no guns in the home.
Sure. I mean, that's what they were assuming before, right?
Yeah, ask any cop that goes knocking on the door. It's just like what we hear from some people about traffic stops with Illinois with no right to carry, and you assume that every car you pull over doesn't have a gun in it already.
Yeah.
Any law enforcement officer worth the salt will tell you if you act that way, you're just asking for trouble. These are the fallacies, the make-believe land, the alternate reality that Daley and company live in. It's what we've been dealing with here for a while, but Mayor Daley's regime is quickly coming to an end.
It is. You're right. And so, hey, by the way, what's the latest on Rahm Emanuel? Has he found a place to live so he can call himself a Chicago resident yet?
Yeah, he's found a place to live, but they started the hearings on today. So that's going to be interesting to see how all that goes. And basically, the thing is, he's leading in all the polls. And there's a newspaper story that was out within the last week that he's being kind of coy what he's going to do on gun stuff. But I think we can expect, him not to go quietly into the night. But with the election, the race isn't for number one. The race is for number two. Because we've got one of these runoff statutes to where if nobody gets 50% plus one, then the top two go into a runoff. And the smart money is that this isn't a race to be the guy. It's the race to be one of two guys. And if you're in one of those two, then you go into the runoff. And come February to the April general, then it's an anybody but Rahm campaign, which is the way part of it's looking. But we'll see how it all goes. There's going to be a whole new crop of aldermen. There are, I forget, over 8 aldermen that are retiring alone.
Wow.
You're going to see a very different city council. And from some of my conversations with people, I think, it is a strong city council form of government, weak mayor form of government. So the next guy, even if it is isn't going to be, I think, as strong as this guy. And that all belies, we're hearing rumblings at the Capitol that the city crew is becoming very concerned about what's going to happen because, they see defections. They don't see the stranglehold that this, tin pot dictator has had on members of the General Assembly.
Interesting.